Okay, everyone, I know we got out we had a really tight last session, but we'll go ahead and get started because I have lots of questions for these guys, and I hope you have lots of questions for them. And so I really, really want to make sure we have time for questions and answers when this session is over. So just also because time is short, I'm not going to give your full introductions. I'm just going to give your names. Mm-hmm. And so all of you can look in the program, and there's a QR code on the program, and you can scan it. It'll take you directly to the speaker bio page, and you can read about them yourselves. They're all worth reading about, but I want to save as much time as possible. So the title of this session is How Can I Make a Difference? Responding to Portrayals of Religion in the Media. And I don't know if you're aware that ICLRS has a headlines news service. We send out thrice weekly emails with a list of curated headlines. Jordan Pendergrass should stand up and take a bow because he curates all of those. But when I first started at the center, my bringing me up to speed was to dump me into those headlines and let me find out more about law and religion. And I had no idea up to that point how much religion was actually in the news. I honestly was very unaware of what was going on. But in the course of working in that, I came to learn very quickly that there are fair and balanced sources, and there are not fair and balanced sources, and not all journalists are created equally, and not all media is created equally. And it was a really eye-opening thing for me, the power that the media has in creating a narrative and in influencing a narrative. And when I say media, I mean not just news media, but social media, the entertainment media, various different forms. And so these three are experts on this, and they're going to talk about this with you today, because all three of them are people that are devoted to providing honest narratives. And so I really appreciate that they're here and that they're willing to take part in this. So we'll start with Kelsey Dallas, who has just become the managing editor of SCOTUSblog. So for anybody that we love her from Deseret News, but now she's going on to SCOTUSblog, which is a source we use frequently on our headlines news service. Then we have Josh Good, who is with the Aspen Institute's Religion and Society program, so he'll talk more about that. And then we have Angela Redding, who is with the Radiant Foundation. And all three of them are fabulous. I've listened to all of you on podcasts, by the way, so there's some good stuff out there. So we'll let you go ahead and start. We'll start with Kelsey first, and then we'll just go from there. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As Blythe noted, I just made a big transition moving from 11 years at the Deseret News, being a religion reporter for them throughout that time, even as I took on other editing roles. Being a religion reporter at the Deseret News, you might immediately think of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I was actually everybody else. What was happening in the religion world that wasn't directly tied to the church, and that included religion at the Supreme Court, religion in politics, and I just absolutely loved it. I was able to learn something new every day. And I'm talking today basically from that experience, what it is like to be a reporter covering religion, and my advice if you're reading about religion and have a concern that you would like to bring to reporters or bring to a news outlet in general. So this was really built around some practical advice. It's a pretty informal presentation, and so I hope that sort of fits the time of day as we all sort of continue digesting all the wonderful things we've heard so far. I want to start by talking a little bit about my husband. My husband, Mike, is not a natural reader of religion news, but something wonderful about him is that he has always read my own stories to engage with them and to talk to me about what I've been working on. The problem with my husband, Mike, is that he also likes to read the comment section. And he tells me the mean things people are saying about my stories, about me, about the way I've explained something. And he wants to tell me about what he's read. He wants to go beat someone up. No, I'm kidding. But I had struggled with that because I am one of those reporters who really wanted to steer clear of the comments section. I never thought it was a place for good dialogue. I thought it was a place for a lot of name-calling and fighting between the different commenters. So my first piece of advice when I think about responding to religion in the media is to stay out of the comment section. If you have feedback to offer, I don't think that's usually the best forum, although I will add a note that several sites, including Deseret News, are putting resources toward improving the comment section, having reporters maybe even weigh in and talk to people in the comment section. So a year from now, I could be much happier about comments. But in general, I would say that going to the comments of an article, you're more likely to get lost or agitated at your fellow commenters than to actually break through and connect with the writer or connect with the outlet about some more significant piece of feedback you'd like to give. Speaking of getting riled up by your fellow commenters, another piece of advice I have is that if you feel very frustrated by a piece of media, that you might want to talk to someone in your life about it, a professional colleague, a fellow member of your faith community, your partner, your friend. You might want to talk to them about your frustrations before you fire off that comment or fire off an email to the reporter. And the reason for that is sometimes an article or other piece of media like a podcast or a video might land with a thud with you because of one turn of phrase, or because of the mood you were in when you were reading it, because you are really hungry and you need to sort of revisit it later when you're more well nourished. And I had that experience recently when I read a really interesting nonfiction book about millennial burnout. So members of the millennial generation, their relationship to their jobs. And I was really struggling with it and just felt like it didn't connect with my own experience as a millennial. But I had such a wonderful time talking to family members about it, talking to my book club about it. And those conversations with other people who had read the same content ended up giving me sort of that opportunity to wrestle with it that I don't think I would have gotten if I just went on Goodreads and gave the book a 1-star review, for example. So sometimes just talking to other people in your life about the piece of media that's troubling you can help you refine your thoughts, refine your critique, or maybe even realize that what you were reacting to was perhaps not fair. Maybe there was just one sentence that you wish could have been different, but the overall piece offered a really great perspective on something that you wouldn't have otherwise understood. Let's say you have those conversations and you still have a frustration about this piece of media. Something is really bothering you. It doesn't tell the whole story, or you feel like it's summarizing your viewpoint in a totally unfair way. What's the right way to contact that content creator? So in my case, like a journalist writing for a newspaper or online. My 2 suggestions, and this is mostly just what worked for me, were going to social media, a social media site that the reporter is active on. So X, or what was formerly known as Twitter, is often still a site for a lot of dialogue about journalism, or emailing the reporter and saying, yes, I have read your piece. Here are my thoughts on it. So in either forum, whether you're on a social media post or in an email, I think that you shouldn't be afraid to say that you have certain frustrations or concerns, but you also want to make it clear that you read their story, that you wanted to engage with their work, that you talked to others about their work, that you appreciate that they're covering religion, but you might consider this next time, and just bring it forward to the reporter in a tone that invites further dialogue and maybe helps their future work on that topic. In general, I would always read reader comments that came to me via email. I wouldn't always have the opportunity or wouldn't necessarily agree with the take that I needed to make an immediate adjustment to the story that they were upset about, but I can guarantee that those emails were shaping the future coverage that I did on that topic, because that type of email that breaks through the chaos of the comment section then leads me to be more sensitive moving forward about whatever topic it is that has prompted someone to reach out. This sounds like it comes from marriage therapy, but it comes from a response to media as well. Be careful of language like always or never. Like, the media always does this when it talks about my faith group. The media never reflects on this part of religion. If you do some Google searching, you're almost always wrong. That's sort of what comes up when we talk about media critiques in general, is that when there is a news event going on and people feel like it's not getting any attention, it's usually just that they happen to look at the homepage of their favorite website at the wrong moment, or they've failed to look at a news site that was much more dedicated to that particular event. And so just be very careful about painting with this broad brush about a specific outlet's work, a specific reporter's work, because it's very hard for you to come in and feel like you understand the whole body of work that's being done by that person or organization. So it's better to keep the conversation focused on one particular story or project. You don't have to feel like you have homework to do to read everything they've done before, but you can say, hey, I encountered your work on this particular topic. I'm a little concerned with the way you approach this. Here's my perspective. I'd be happy to talk more if you have additional questions. That advice about being aware of always or never, it also comes from the fact that a reporter, a writer, everyone at a news outlet, they're human beings with human emotions. And I feel like when people offer critiques, they don't always think of the person behind the story that has really gotten into reporting out of a desire to tell good stories and help inform the public. There are certainly incentives that come into play that can lead reporters down more negative paths where they're just trying to get a bunch of clicks, for example. But most of us are in the newsroom fighting the good fight, wanting to tell good stories, wanting to bring more people into this knowledge that we were able to get by having the job title that we did and talking to really interesting people during our interviews. When I think about the critiques I've seen of my work, I often laugh thinking about the meme that you see on the internet sometimes where it's like a very small, cute creature, and it's like, when you're mean to me, this is who you're being mean to. And that's often how I felt when people would come at me swinging about a story that I did that's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I wasn't in this business to anger you. I was here to tell this interesting story, and it makes my heart hurt to think that this piece of content has really upset you. So try to keep that reporter's humanity in mind when you're responding to them. And you might be tickled to know that that has also come up in my book club that I referenced earlier, where we were saying even a book that we felt was terrible was a book that someone worked really hard on. And so that should sort of inform your critique of their project. Another note I had is that you should be as loud in your praise for good journalism as you are when you're angry about bad journalism. You should use your own social media accounts to really shine a spotlight on videos, podcasts, projects that you think just absolutely nailed it, and tag that writer, because it seems like we have all the energy in the world to complain about pieces that we don't like, but we rarely put that same effort into really pointing others toward the best types of content. And last but not least, and it's related to that last one, in the day and age that we live in, we all have an opportunity to share content. It can be on your own social media accounts, it can be in community settings, but you can tell your own stories about faith and your encounters with members of other religions, and in that way sort of move the story forward. It's a difficult moment in journalism where a lot of outlets are having to scale back on their religion coverage, but it's an amazing moment in the media landscape where everybody has a chance to make TikTok videos or send out X posts or be on Blue Sky and start a conversation about something that you're observing in the world. And so I would really encourage you to model the types of portrayals of religion in the media that you would like to see. And that can often open a door to additional chances to shape the work being done by reporters, because reporters see the stories that are out there on social media and then share them on their own platforms. So I'll end there. Thank you so much, and looking forward to your questions later.
Well, thanks for the big privilege of being here on this wonderful panel. And the only downside, of course, is that you got to speak after Kelsey Dallas, who's been 11 years at the same post and is now headed off to an even bigger one, and who speaks, without reading it from the text, like it's nothing. So here we go. So Kelsey mentioned her husband, and I feel duty-bound to mention briefly my wife, Rebecca, who is the president of our family. I'm the vice president. And she, we were working through some things in year 7 or 8 of our marriage. I remember a decade ago or so in Washington, D.C., and I had the privilege of hosting a guy called Michael Novak as a speaker with a bunch of faculty from faith-based colleges, and I had to drive Michael Novak to his doctor's appointment the day after the talk. And he was asking me about life, and I said, it's going really well. I mean, we're doing the best we can. We're kind of growing. We're making some mistakes in our marriage. And he said, how long have you been married? I said, 7 years. He said, you know, my wife and I have been married for 62 years. And I got to tell you, the first 62 years are the hardest. Now, I was trying to listen to Kelsey this whole time because, you know, it's confusing in Washington, where I'm from. They say the definition of listening is waiting your turn to speak. But I was trying to listen, and I think a lot of the things that she just named are congruent with what I was trying to put together here. You know, I've been working with journalists at Faith Angle Forum for a little north of 7 years, and it's really fun. We take these journalists away, usually to the sea, for 2 or 3 days at a time, to try to go deep on some matter of religion, or religion adjacent, you know, religion and AI, religion and national populism, religion and climate, religion and our basic thesis is that it's always in the room. Religion is always in the room. It's in this room, whether you see it or not. It's in cabinet rooms, whether you see it or not. It's in boardrooms, whether you see it or not. And if you're a really good journalist, you won't miss it, you know? You'll see it, and you'll write pieces that have a greater bit of nuance, a greater bit of insight, including into traditions not our own. And our program at Aspen is very much about sort of the promise of religious pluralism and the interestingness and the curiosity of religious pluralism and religious dynamism, particularly these days amongst creative, exilic minorities. But I've been learning, I think, that journalists are real people, you know? Like, I've met Kelsey's husband. And journalists are real people. They're normal people. They're ordinary people. They are a lot less like Aaron Brockovich than I thought, you know, kind of going off to the corner and writing the whole story on their own. They actually, you know, do a lot of talking in Slack and in conversations at the water cooler or the coffee machine. They do a lot of talking with their editors. They're shaped by the ecosystem of their own newsroom, and that really matters. So our friend David Brooks said early on, get the editors. Don't get reporters alone. It's great to get reporters. It's great to get columnists. Get the editors, because the editors, of course, shape the priorities of the newsroom. So we've been trying to do that. We have some new work underway in Europe with European journalists, and I know Aaron Shrinian has heard me say this before, but that same friend said, you know, that work over there is like Faith Angle Forum 25 years ago, like Faith Angle Forum at the beginning, because it's the first time that a lot of journalists have given any real thought to the idea of religion. And of course, religion is quite different with state churches and with laicite and with a lot of sort of different ways that it functions in society. Now, a friend of ours says any good column has got to be a bullet, not buckshot. And I'm a little worried that my talk, quick, is going to be a little more like buckshot than like one clean bullet, but here we go. The basic thesis of Faith Angle and the work we're doing at Religion and Society at Aspen is that if you want to change history at all, if you want to change society at all, if you want to change culture even a little bit, you have to do it as part of a dense overlapping network, like James Davison Hunter says. You have to do it with funders in friendship with journalists, in friendship with policymakers like the Clapham sect. And that's seen itself over and over again to play itself out. So the world is a very religious place. That's our sort of starting place. You know, of 7.9 billion people on the planet as of 2 years ago, according to Pew, approximately 2.4 billion are Christian, 1.9 billion are Muslim, 1.2 billion are Hindu, 530 million people are Buddhists, and 400 million people practice folk religions, while only 1.2 billion people in the world today are religiously unaffiliated. The world's a religious place, and clearly that's true of the United States as well, even if things are shifting a bit. The late Peter Berger, the sociologist from BU, used to talk about, in his view, a worldwide desecularization thesis. That is, that despite our increasing wealth and education, against the European trend, we remain religious. Here's what he said shortly before he died. I came to the conclusion some years ago that to replace secularization theory, to explain religion in the modern world, we need a theory of pluralism. Modernity does not necessarily produce secularity. It necessarily produces pluralism, by which I mean the coexistence in the same society of different worldviews and different value systems. I think that's an important image to wrestle with, even after lunch. pluralism, the cacophony and harmony and diversity and challenge and opportunity of it. It's messy, but it's also more interesting than, say, 1950s WASP homogeneity. And it's happening, as most of us in the room recognize. We're right on the cusp of becoming a minority-majority country. Of course, it doesn't mean that we aren't religious anymore, quite the contrary. As the latest Pew Religious Landscape Survey points out, from 39,000 surveys, 62% of Americans today are Christian. 29% of Americans today are nones, and of that group, a fifth are atheists, a fifth are agnostic, 3/5 are nothing in particular, with 69% saying that they believe in God or in a higher power. 2% are Jews, 1% are Muslims, 1% are Hindus, and the balance is mostly folk religions, a group that Christian Smith says is growing quite quickly. But we're a very religious country still. As citizens, lawyers, policymakers, a lot of the roles represented in this conference all day that we've been listening to and engaging with, I think the key question is how can we work with the grain of American religiosity and religious movement? If one major trend in our lives is a time of declining religion, and that's true, right? Gallup says that we were 71% engaged in a local congregation for 7 straight decades, and now suddenly, in the last 25 years, we're more like 48% engaged with a religious congregation. We have definitely witnessed a massive decline in religious engagement. And that's been coupled with a massive, as we were hearing from Shaylin Romney Garrett just now, a massive decline in societal trust and social trust in society. Maybe we could do it again, but right now we're at the bottom of the pit. From journalism to politics, from small business to the Supreme Court, even to the military, societal trust has plummeted. David Brooks reminded us the other day that 2 generations ago, if you ask people, do you trust government to do the right thing most of the time, 75% said yes. Today, 12%. And if we all have a role to play in forging social trust, journalism has perhaps a special role because it's the common glue that helps us to read the world. For decades, journalism was a guild with carefully guarded national news channels, well-known papers, a clear set of editor assignments. But since the arrival of the ubiquitous smartphone, local news outlets have been drying up at a rate of more than 2 newspapers a week. Loretta Powell Jobs may be perfectly happy to spend $16 or $17 million a year to, support the Atlantic and write, have great journalism underway. But journalism is in decline. A few other notable major papers, the Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, the Post, they're carrying on, but journalism is in decline, and local journalism is in big trouble. A big trend today is that well-known newspapers and reporters who are exited from the big outlets, like the New York Magazine or New York Times, can quickly start a very successful Substack or podcasts. Journalists like Kelsey's colleagues also know that, say, covering the Ukraine war may yield 29 views, whereas covering woke campus politics may yield 29,000 views or 49,000 views. So many skate to where the puck is popular. Coverage of city council meetings and PTA takeaways, is down, whereas the national politicization and often anger toward the other side is up. Journalism has become less about the facts and more about performative politainment. And whether journalism or religion or civic engagement, whether it's more formative or performative, that's the big distinction that Yuval Levin draws out, who was referenced this morning by Elder Nash. Religion is. Our conviction is that journalists, as I mentioned, who can appreciate that, write better, more interesting pieces that stretch and expand our knowledge in the context of real life. Brian Grimm and Melissa Grimm reported in 2016 that the total revenue of U.S. houses of worship every year is just over $1.2 trillion. And if you include not just the budgets of religious buildings, like churches and synagogues and temples and mosques, but their affiliated faith-based nonprofits, the same study that the Grimms did finds that religious revenue in America is at least twice that, $2.5 trillion. That's just shy of 1/10 of American GDP. So in short, the world is big, with lots of religion, and so is the United States. Increasingly, we look less like a singular white Anglo-Saxon Protestant hegemonic majority and much more like diverse pluralism. Pluralism is far more realistic as an endgame than secularism, and we see it happening before our eyes in the new surveys from Gallup, Pew, and others. In the first quarter of the 20th century, we've seen clear religious retraction from 71% down to 48%. And of course, none of us knows the future, but faith-based nonprofits and houses of worship still comprise a significant share of American life, maybe 8 or even 10% of GDP. Our thesis really is that religion is always in the room. What can we do? We can engage journalists as ordinary citizens. You can ask Kelsey and others what gets traction, what gets picked up. We can speak candidly with journalists, speak on the record, you can speak off the record, you can speak on background, or you can speak to say, yo, I'll give you some input, but I'd like to sign off on any quotes that you choose to use. And most journalists will honor all 4 of those categories, including the last one. You can pull rather than push on these things, and Angela's friends at the Coalition for Faith and Media are holding up a new journalism prize in religion reporting, inviting and inciting people to write better, more compelling stories. There's lots that can be done. Looking forward to the conversation.
Josh failed to mention how hard it is to go after Kelsey and Josh and add something of interest to the group here. So let me try. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about in the context of religious freedom is how much hate and fear plague and characterize all of the discussions around religious liberty, religious oppression. And you see one religion against another, us versus them, the in-group, the out-group. You see a dictator, a homogenous majority versus a marginalized minority. Except that's not the kind of hate and fear that I want to talk about. It's a different kind of more insidious, pervasive hate and fear that all of us are subject to. A different us versus them. The religious, people of faith, us, and the media, them. Don't we do that? We do the same thing that we don't want to see in the world between the religious and the media, and we think of the media as the enemy that's perpetuating this global hegemonic type of negativity and fear. And the reality is far more complex. As we all know, the reality versus the stories we tell are more nuanced and complex. So we have done quite a bit of research. I have the privilege of representing our flagship project, the Faith and Media Initiative today, and the Coalition for Faith and Media that Josh talked about. Kelsey gave us a lot of practical tips, and Josh gave us a historical and global and visionary view of what we're really up against. Let me add just a couple of data points. We've conducted multiple studies in partnership with HarrisX and Gallup and many other organizations and partnered with in trying to understand what does the media landscape actually look like. So let me give you a little bit of the landscape analysis between both the challenges in the industry, if I can add just a little bit to what Kelsey and Josh said, and at the individual level, the media individual level. So in the industry, this is what we found. We did dozens of interviews with journalists, executives, editors on the journalism side. We also did just as many interviews on the entertainment Hollywood side. And then we conducted multiple polls of almost 10,000 respondents in 11 countries, in 18 countries, 5 languages, 9 languages, trying to get an understanding of the global landscape. So here's what we heard from journalists from the industry perspective. First and foremost, you heard this, newsroom economics. Specialists are going down, journalists are under a lot of pressure. What I've heard from many, one journalist told me, I have to publish in 2, even 3 different formats for every story. There's print, there's website, there's social, right? And all the assets that go with that. Am I right, Kelsey? Yeah. So, and as Josh has said to me before and said today, not every journalist is Aaron Brockovich. I sat with Lauren Green, who's the Fox News religion correspondent, chief correspondent, and she said, I didn't get the press release. If it doesn't come across my desk, I don't hear about it. So there's just the reality of the pressure and the scope of work that the newsroom is demanding. Add to that clicks for controversy is what we like to call. If it bleeds, it leads, right? Yeah. That's always been true, and that's even more so when you've got all these sensational, eye-grabbing headlines that trigger dopamine. Where are we going to go, whether we want to or not? It's that or cat videos, right? I mean, it's just, we can't help ourselves. So you've got these clicks for controversy. On the entertainment side, it's a different problem to solve, but it's just as problematic. And that is all of Hollywood TV streaming is being purchased by Wall Street, private equity, and venture capital. And what's the game? When I've got a nodding businessman in the middle saying, I know this game, it is mitigating risk. So if you've been to the movies lately, what do you see? Prequels, sequels, or remakes? Live action remakes, right? I mean, it's all about risk mitigation. So when it comes to representing religion or not, risk reward, it's a natural calculation. Leave it out, nobody will care. Or at least that's the perception. So what is the reality of religion portrayals in media? Is it just us religious people saying, I'm not being treated fairly, I'm not out there? Well, we heard from Josh that most of the global population is affiliated with a religion, with faith in some way or another. And Pew suggests it's going to rise globally. We're not decreasing. What does the media landscape look like? 74% of faith-related media or media covering faith is negative or extreme in nature. That's according to an AI-enabled poll of over 30 million pieces of digital content that we conducted with Davis Partners. So it's not just a perception, it's real. That remaining percentage, 20%, is informative, mostly. It's, we have a new pope. He's from the United States and has dual citizenship in Peru. It's just kind of normal things, right? Only 6% is both personal and positive. So there is a gap. There is a challenge in how we see this. Now let's talk about the individual level. What's the pressure of a journalist? We heard that from Kelsey and we heard it from Josh. Journalists are normal people. Now there's a couple of kind of complicating factors. People in the media, both journalists and in Hollywood or in entertainment media, they underrepresent religiosity and religious affiliation compared to the general population. So it's not their identity. And in addition to that, the culture that we just talked about doesn't support religious inclusion, risk reward. So if you're a religious person and your both professional and personal life is around faith, you're going to see it absolutely everywhere. If that's not your personal identity and your profession isn't supporting it, the aperture is too wide. It is not in your focal point, so you aren't going to pay attention to it. It's less malicious, I think, than is often perceived. In addition, most journalists, fewer than 20%, told us that they felt very knowledgeable about the nuances of faith. So they're not experts. Newsroom economics are driving down expertise in that category, and it's just a challenge between the two. So is it all their fault? Is it all the them media, the them over there media? No. The reality is they say, 85% said, we need more faith spokespeople. More faith spokespeople. So what's going on here? It's kind of this mutual neglect and distrust. And at the very bottom, we have this us versus them, hate and fear going along, right? So what journalists told us, fear of getting it wrong. What Hollywood has told us, fear of being on the wrong side. Fear of being characterized, stereotyped, put into the bucket that everyone's using to kind of portray people who are religious. And then why aren't we making ourselves available? Fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of offending. Fear of trying to defend while also unintentionally saying the wrong thing. I went through this weekend when I had an opportunity to respond to something that was a negative portrayal in the media, and instantly I just thought, I'm not going to be conservative enough, or modern enough, or progressive enough, or liberal enough, or Republican enough, or go down the list. I don't know enough about this religious community to make sure that I'm not saying something inadvertently wrong. Many of us are motivated by fear. So, as my husband said this morning, since everyone else is mentioning, another, who's learning to braid hair for swim practice today, he said to me, so what do you do about it? Okay, great, it's tough. What are you going to do? And we heard fantastic things. And what I love about what Kelsey said is, I'm a journalist, come talk to me. I'm a normal person, I want to get it right, come talk to me. And the truth is, most journalists are that way. I talked to a woman who leads the Africa division of a significant media organization, and she said to me, we reach 92 million people a week engaged in our properties. They're mostly young. We cover violence, we cover terrorism, we cover conflict. It never occurred to me until today, after we kind of had this similar kind of conversation, that I could cover it differently, that I could talk about religion as a bridge building, civility building solution to the problem. That ends today. That's what she said. It just never occurred to her. And she's a person of faith and didn't think about her professional platform as an opportunity to be able to change the narrative. So I loved these examples, and I'll say just a couple more things. The other thing is, and we've alluded to this, every single one of us is the media now. We all have a platform. I'm terrible at it. I haven't posted on Instagram since my 7-year-old was born. So there's a little hypocrisy in me making this statement in terms of using my own personal platforms, but all of us can, and all of us can model what it's like to not just defend our own religion, our own perspective, but to support others in that. So, for example, Josh talked about the Coalition Award, where we need to reward journalism. We need to reward, which we've done in partnership with Variety, rewarding people in Hollywood who are doing it well. And we need to model that behavior. We've launched a family fellowship where we have scholars, academics, people in award-winning filmmakers who are saying, I'm willing to publish every single month something that talks about faith inclusivity in the context of mainstream news, or on a podcast, or a media appearance. Every one of us can do that on our own platforms, or if we are in a position of influence, we can add our voice to what it looks like. The other thing, I had someone in our fellowship, a rabbi from Rhode Island, say, I don't like how Mormon women are being portrayed in media right now. And he said, I want to write something about that. That is far more powerful than a woman who's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints saying, I don't appreciate how you're characterizing me. You expect Catholics to defend Catholics, Jews to defend Jews. What if Muslims and Jews were defending evangelical Christians? That changes the narrative, and it models what civility looks like. It reminds me of something I was listening to just this morning. President Russell M. Nelson, who is the president and prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, said, hate never persuades. Contention never leads to inspired solutions. So if you go at the media with an us versus them lens, you're never going to create an inspired solution. If instead you think about a partnership and you think about being a peacemaker, we read this in the New Testament, right? In Matthew, blessed are the peacemakers. And in every religion, there's some form of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I'm using my own Christian language, but there's a form of that. If we were to change how we thought about everyone's out against us, instead, let's partner together to tell the rich narrative, not motivated by fear or by hate, but by beauty and civility and charity. It's got to start somewhere. It might as well start with us. Thanks. Shall we?
Shall we? Yes. So thank you. That was all very great. And as I said, so you may not all be aware, but Faith Angle Forum has a podcast twice monthly. I was listening to it this morning on my way into work to familiarize myself. Great stuff, very nuanced, which I was listening to the one with Ibu Patel and Emma Green on DEI, and I found my opinions changing in the course of listening to that, which is good because I had a very strong opinion one way and found myself influenced, so that's good. I've listened to Kelsey talk about religious freedom, and one of the things that I loved about a podcast you did on religious freedom that I listened to, you said exactly what Angela just said. It's not so much about religious freedom for me or religious freedom for you. It's about connecting with your neighbors and finding out how you can help your neighbors. How can I speak out for my neighbor? How can I make sure my neighbor is cared for as well as my interests being cared for? And then I've listened to you talk about these same facts and the need that we all have to speak. So I'm excited. I have a million questions, but I want to let you guys ask questions first. So and Brent Belknap is like holding up his hand. So I'm gonna have that. We'll pass around the mic. Please speak into the mic. We are recording this, so it will be posted later on the religiousfreedom.byu.edu site. So please speak into the mic with your question, even if you think your voice is loud enough. So.
I need the mic. I know my voice is not loud enough. So I want to address my question to Kelsey. First of all, I feel like you have no idea who I am, but I feel like I know you because I've read so many of your pieces in the Deseret News. And I understand you're off to other pastures now. And you have done a real service, I think, in talking about and presenting religion in a very favorable way. So I want to take one of your points that you were going through in your presentation and actually turn it back to you and say thank you to a journalist for the positive work that you've done. Specifically, however, as a Latter-day Saint myself, it is a bit chagrining or frustrating, I suppose, for all of us to see things, the Book of Mormon Broadway play or Under the Banner of Heaven books or Real Housewives of Salt Lake City or Sister Wives, things like that, these portrayals of Latter-day Saints that we find, I think most of us would find, so unrelated and untrue at all to who we see ourselves in our core. And then there was this presentation this morning by Harold Koenig that I thought, wow, I would love to use that as clickbait, whatever he just said in some summarized article, to be able to share that on my social media feed, on Facebook or whatever, to say, friends, this is how I feel. These are the positive things that I receive from religion. The health benefits, the mental, all the heavy quantitative data, the volume itself is overwhelming. I know you're off to other pastures, but if you're still writing stuff or could put it out into your editorial community, please pick up more stories like that of the good, positive effects of religion and religious belief, religious attendance, church community, so that those of us who are people of faith can share that with other people to say, there's value to all of this, and it's real. It's quantitative, even down to the cellular level of your physical and mental health. So that's not really a question. It's kind of a common question, but it's a question request. If you could please do something about that.
It does
Thank
give
you.
me an open door to say one of the signs of hope that I have noticed in recent months is that it's still the case that stories about controversy perform better than just a typical article about the latest development in some ongoing saga. But I've also noticed that people are very taken by stories of surprise. Something unexpected happened. So one of the last stories I did for the Deseret News was about how often the Supreme Court is unanimous or close to unanimous on religious freedom cases. So religious freedom defined pretty broadly, like cases related to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act or the ministerial exception. And that story took off like crazy compared to a typical just here's what happened at the Supreme Court today, because it was challenging people's assumptions about religious freedom and also about how the Supreme Court operates. People might assume it's just always the more liberal justices versus the more conservative justices. So that's just a note that, yes, I think there are opportunities for reporters to do brighter, happier stories, and it can still lead to really great engagement if you find a surprising angle. And in terms of the health benefits, sometimes it's surprising just to point that out for people, because people who aren't active in a faith group may have no clue that going to church is about more than just following a set of rules or something like that.
Can I add a quick postscript? We will absolutely be inviting him, Harold Koenig, to Faith Angle. It's just the kind of way in to sort of showcasing for journalists the sort of pavement-like application of what religious belief can look like. I know Springtide's done some research along that same line quite recently. But just real quick on your appropriate accolade to Kelsey. I have a friend called Henry Kessner. He runs Sovereign Capital. They're doing great. He does running in order to sort of let off steam because he works really, really hard. And he regularly listened to the evangelical pastor, Tim Keller, on those runs. And the first time he ever met the late Tim Keller, I was with him. And he went up to him and he said, Pastor Keller, you don't know me, but you and I have gone running together hundreds of times. It's like Kelsey Dallas.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. I think I heard in the last presentation in the general session that we should go and meet our neighbor. And I think it's great, and I'm skeptical that it's going to happen. But here you're saying go online and post something positive. So I'm just wondering what the expectations should be. What are the expectations both in terms of posting and in reception, consumption?
It's a really good question. I think for the most part, if you're like Kelsey, don't read the comments. Just do the right thing, right? No, but I think in reality, if it is your personal lived experience and it's who you are, authenticity is the name of the game. So if you're going to go and be dogmatic, we did quite a bit of research early on with young people in particular under one of our other flagship projects, Skylight, which was all about connecting young people with a higher power. We engaged with 4, 5, 6 million young people across all of our platforms, and we learned a lot from them. And we learned, if you're trying to convert me, I'm out. If you're just being you, I'm in. If you are going to connect it to something that'll make my life better, like Dr. Koenig does, I'm in. If you're going to make me feel bad about who I am or be intolerant of me, I'm out. So I think in terms of guidelines, it's those. Don't be motivated by fear or hate. Don't try to make people be like you. Don't try to be inauthentic or different from who you really are. But if you're going to go to Mass on Easter, share it. It's a part of who you are and it's a part of your life. Share it. If you see people engaging in positively modeled behavior, whether that's religious or community-based, share it. Talk about it. And don't forget to leave that part, don't leave that part of your identity out. That's what people do. They say, I'm this person, my profession, I'm a parent, I'm all of these things, I play soccer. They don't talk about their faith identity. If all of us just included a little bit about who we are in terms of our faith identity, it'd be normal for people to talk about their faith. That's what really needs to shift. It just needs to be normal. So just include it. If it's normal to you, include it.
Yeah, just a small funny note and then a personal story. I was at the airport yesterday preparing to get here, and I overheard some colleagues talking about the business trip they were going on, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, we were trying to figure out that rental car yesterday, but I just kept getting texts in church. I can't answer when I'm in church." And I was really amazed that he was a young guy, like reflecting on being in church when you just don't hear young people talking about their religious activities that often. And so it was enough to sort of strike me out there in O'Hare Airport in Chicago. The other story I wanted to share is that this is a personal faith story, not a professional journalism story, but I grew up very active with my family in a local Presbyterian church. My parents are still involved. And one of the things that I've wrestled with as an adult is how to find that same kind of faith community with my own kids. And sort of, it feels almost impossible to form those deep connections that I was just like born into through my parents. And I talked to one of my good friends and colleagues, a reporter at Christianity Today, about it. And he said, you just have to accept that it's going to be awkward. You just have to accept that there will be really embarrassing small talk moments and uncomfortable, cringy jokes. And so that's the same story that came to mind when you talked about having to go meet your neighbor and try to forge ahead with more positive connections, is that you have to go into it expecting it to be awkward, but just believing in this bigger mission of sort of building stronger ties between different faith communities.
I guess I'd just ask, don't you think it's more important to have sort of the real thing of thick religion sort of being practiced at the local level with your own family, with your own community, with your own friends, than to be the hero, you know, who is writing comments on an article individually in a way that somehow changes the media ecosystem? You know, like, I just think the most important thing is to be the kinds of people who are puzzling to journalists when they come upon you, much more than to sort of, you know, love your neighbor one click at a time.
I just had a quick comment and question, but I was a journalist back probably 25 years ago, right? And so the journalistic landscape has changed so much, and now, you know, over the past 20 years, even the way I pitch is so different than maybe even 10 years earlier. You know, shorter, more creative, say something personal to the reporter. Hey, you know, I love that story you did yesterday about this, and this. This is what I thought about it, and then jump into that angle. But I think that, and this is, I guess, my question is it sounds like we need to get more creative in approaching our reporters, because we, you know, if it bleeds, it leads, and we kind of don't want to be a part of that crowd, right? We want to be a part of something that inspires. We want to be a part of something that helps to say, hey, there's good in the world. And so we've got to find the unique angles that bring surprise and things like that. So do you have, I mean, you were saying, you know, more than an email, somebody messaging you on Twitter, and, you know, like, I mean, I think that's kind of the key right now is we just, as people trying to connect and differentiate our messaging, it can't just be, hey, this summit went on, you should cover it. because they're not going to get any clicks for that, and we're not going to get any clicks for that either, from the reporter. But I don't know if you have any more. I'm just wanting to make sure I'm digesting it all, and if I've missed anything.
My main comment would be, I didn't mean to say that on social media it would be like a direct message to the reporter. I actually think that it would be a general message about the piece of content and feeling free to tag the reporter. So what I mean is like, oh, I stumbled upon this story lately and I thought it was such an interesting take on this conflict from @Kelsey Dallas. I think she could do a follow-up story where she looks specifically at this one community and the solutions they're finding to bring different people together. That sounds really strange and like canned language, but what I mean is you're putting your own perspective out there. It doesn't matter if I do respond to you, but hopefully I would. But you're kind of inviting all of the people who see your post into a dialogue about that piece of content or about that topic and about the potential solutions. So you're kind of forging ahead and building on that interesting story or challenging story that you read.
Kelsey, I think that's so wise, and I would just add to that, you have to do the work for them. So they don't care about you, they care about their news cycle. So if you can find out what's relevant, what are they going to write about next? What are the trends in the media? How do I fit into something they already care about? You've got to help them do the work. They're not going to look you up and find your mission and care about your summit. You've got to do the work for them in some way, and then they'll go do the really hard work of making it really work. But you've got to get the pitch right in there in a place that makes sense to them and is relevant to them.
A question back here and Anna. So we probably, let's go ahead and take these two questions. Go ahead. And then we'll probably have to wrap. But we'll give you a couple.
Thank you. Hi. The panel today has given me bold courage in the future because I endorse and heartily follow each of the people that's on the panel. My question is about the other freedom. We're talking about religious freedom in this conference. The people that we were talking about, the media, care a lot about press freedom. Do the two groups see the two freedoms as cousins? Are we to address it that way, or should we be separating them? What are your thoughts, because you're the people that speak to both those sectors?
We're going to really wait for the second question, or we're going to go?
No, go ahead, and then we'll have Anna.
I mean, I just think the politicization, polarization dynamic is a big part of that answer right now, right? Like, I think at the White House, all this sort of enemy of the people dynamic and fake news, that sort of totalizes journalism and media ends up being tricky, like tar. It gives people sort of an antagonistic view of sort of those religious people that put him there, or something like that. So that's tricky. I do think they absolutely go hand in hand in a way that, what did Judge Brandeis say was that, the sunlight is the disinfectant through which we understand. Journalism is sunlight. It holds people in power accountable. Journalism is super important. We lose that, we're in real trouble. Lots of places around the world do lose journalism, freedom of the press, and they are in trouble, big trouble. We don't want that. We don't want the boot at the door of the Washington Post columnist or journalist who wrote a bad piece. That we can't do that in the same way that freedom of conscience, freedom of religion that we're spending the day today talking about is so. But very much together, we just have to navigate that dynamic of totalizing fake news commentary that is tricky. I don't think it's that real. I think plenty of journalists are going to continue to cover this administration really, really carefully, but it is a little bit dangerous.
I just wanted to know, and this feels hopefully not too negative, but they're caught in a very negative cycle right now where to break free through some of the challenges with press freedom, you have to have readers, just Americans in general, feel excited about media coverage and want to support it. But right now, because of issues like what we're talking about with maybe unfair media coverage or misunderstandings about media coverage, including about religion, there's not that goodwill that's like, I'm going to help these media organizations stay alive. I love journalism. And so you have to somehow break out of that negative cycle and get the journalists the freedom to do really good work, but also get the regular readers excited about journalism.
Amen to that. I mean, they're inseparable. Freedom applies to all, right? I mean, if you want to be free to express your beliefs, then You need free systems that allow others to express their beliefs, and that's what the press is about. That's what religious freedom is about. So I think it's a foundational principle. It's not, if I'm Republican and conservative, then I want religion to be free. If I'm liberal and progressive, I want the press to be free. It doesn't work that way. You want everyone who disagrees with you to be free to disagree, and those go hand in hand.
And I do think we're downstream of the fact that social trust being so down across the institutions, that's a little bit of a unique thing, and it's certainly a worrying thing. You know, the numbers on religion, I can't remember, I think it's in the 30s. Do you trust all of the time or most of the time, you know, religion to be a force for good in the world? In the 30s, you know. Do you trust TV journalism most of the time, all the time? That number is 11%. Do you trust newspapers all the time, most of the time? That number is 14%. I mean, it's really different than it was a couple generations ago.
Okay, I know we're down on time, but because we started late, I'm going to give Anna time to answer her question, or ask her question. We'll answer that, and then we'll wrap. So go ahead.
Okay, my question is about the role of a journalist's faith. You talked about how journalists are disproportionately tend to have less religious affiliation. Do you think that that is part of the problem when religion is getting covered but not very accurately or not very well? I know sometimes when I read something and it feels like foreign the way my religion is described, do we need more journalists of faith, or what do you think are the solutions there?
I'll jump in because I was thinking about this, Angela, as you were presenting. There are a couple of related challenges when you talk about covering religion. One is that the reporter might have no sense of religion. That you don't have to be religious, but you need to have sort of a sense of the force of religion in people's lives, the power of it, how it compels them to do certain things and not do other things. So you have to have this general awareness of how much faith means to people of faith. But it can actually then become a problem if you're so deep in one specific faith that you can't even wrap your mind around a different tradition. Part of what I hope makes me good at covering religion is that I grew up very embedded in a specific faith group. I then dabbled in a bunch of different traditions at college. I studied religious studies, and then I worked for this outlet that is has a long-term relationship with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sort of bringing me into relationship with Latter-day Saints. And so just through my education and personal experiences, was able to dabble in all these different religious experiences. You can't replicate that. Like, nobody should have to check all those boxes to be a religion reporter, but programs like the Faith Angle Forum can sort of give people quick hits of that type of experience, because you hear from people of all different faiths, you take faith very seriously, and you just get people out of their own specific bubble.
I've got a bunch of thoughts on this, but to be quick, you know, journalists can change. We had a great journalist at NPR, now she's at Vox, who came and heard Tim Keller in 2013. And she said, I've never heard anyone talk about Christianity like that man, that Tim Keller man. So she went back to Washington, D.C. She clicked Tim Keller Church, D.C., click, and she found a church that was affiliated with the same denomination. She started going, and 4.5 months later, she became a Christian. And so her work as an editor now at Vox, you know, is still in play. Her story is still unfolding. Most people like to know the journalist very much affects how you read the story. And I won't name too many names, but it's just true, you know. It's like, I know, she's mad right now, you know, she's going through a thing. That's what, you see it, you know. So people are nimble, people can change. The Templeton Trust's people, they say, Sir John Templeton, when he died, he put out a piece and he said, we probably understand about 1% of spiritual truth. And if we think of it that there's 99% that we don't understand, we start getting real humble, real curious about other traditions, about other, and that's a great posture, I think. Hopefully journalists catch that.
Mm-hmm. I'll end with this, with what a wise mentor friend of mine coined the term faith fluency. That's what it comes down to. And you can get that in a lot of different ways, whether it's just intellectual curiosity and humility and a willingness to go explore, whether it's your personal experience, whether it's surrounding yourself with diverse people of different religious backgrounds. It's just about taking your focal point and widening the aperture. And that faith fluency can come from a lot of different ways, but it is essential because religion is an essential core institution that has a critical societal and personal impact, and we've learned all about that today. If we leave it out, we leave out one of our most important tools for individual and community flourishing. So faith fluency, that's the answer.
These three have been wonderful. And the things I'm taking away from this is that we need to connect better, that we need to gain more trust, and we're not going to gain that unless we are connecting better with each other and getting to know each other's stories. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Everyone give them a huge round of applause. They've been fabulous. And thank you for coming.